Hey there, thank you so much for joining us. We're a little past 3 o'clock. We're running a little behind today, but thank you so much. I'm Randy Wallace, and you are watching a live stream of Behind Breaking Bond. Obviously, you care about the current situation that's going on in Harris County, where repeat violent offenders are being released on multiple felony bonds to continue their crime sprees. Joining me is...
We are up 3 or 4, and we have a 5-minute window, right? So good. Andy Kahan, Director of Victim Services, Victim Advocacy, Crime Stoppers of Houston.
And also here, State Senator John Whitmire. Senator Whitmire, for folks that are new, kind of explain your background with the criminal justice system in the state of Texas.
Well, I went to the legislature as a young state rep in 1972, the Senate in 83, and then in 93, I was asked by the Lieutenant Governor Bob Bullock to chair criminal justice. Criminal justice at the state level was completely broken, a revolving door. So we got busy with an expansion program, treatment, classification of inmates, which had never been done. And I would believe it's fair to say the state system is working. We certainly have incidents like the tragedy with the escaped convict, which we'll discuss. But if you do a crime in the state of Texas, we know where you're going. The problem is in Harris County, we're not sending many people to the state right now,
Right,
because of the backlog at the county, which we need to seriously address.
but
I do currently chair it, and am very passionate about my work.
you brought this up. What was it? We had an inmate who escaped. He was on the run for 3 weeks, and it sounds like something out of a movie. From what you've been told, how did this guy even pull this off?
Well, it's still under investigation. Certainly, I'm of the opinion that there was inside assistance. He either had to have a handcuff key, a leggings key. He had a prison-made knife. He had a metal worker to pry himself from his cage.
And this man was actually in a cage.
Yeah, the bus had 16 inmates. He, because he had come off of administrative stay, is in a confined cage of his own. But the other inmates knew what he was fixing to do, we're told by inmates. And so when they got ready for the event, they started a disturbance. They were singing, jumping up and down. The correction officer in the back, armed, was paying attention to them while he freed himself with a metal tool to get out of his cage. He gets out and actually, probably as a setup, started fighting another inmate. The driver stops, comes there. He stabs the driver. The driver gets off the bus. They're armed. They shoot at Lopez, the convict, and he's up driving the bus by this time. They shoot the tires. The point is, understaffing is allowed only 2 correction officers on the bus. They used to have 3. So I've asked, and it's being followed today, no more transportation.
Yeah, you did that yesterday. You were right on that.
And they're owned to it, because at 2 o'clock this morning on 45 going back to Huntsville, we had a van carrying a medical inmate with 3 correction officers armed. So they did follow the instructions. I do think they need a trailing vehicle, but more importantly, Andy, they need to get off the roads.
Yeah.
I learned this morning that on an average day, you've got 2,000 inmates on the road, some of the worst of the worst. So one, they've got to reduce the medical transportation only for life-threatening situations.
And
They've got to do medical, they got to do medical video, and they got to have the caretakers go to the unit. And this nonsense of relocating prisoners, I used to think somebody had a contract for transporting prisoners.
To try to make some money.
It was a speculation I could never prove. But 2,000 on the road. I asked the director this morning, of the 120,000 inmates today, how many do you think you would rate is the most serious, the most violent, the worst of the worst? He came up with 500. I thought it would be larger. But this Lopez character was a capital murder.
Yeah.
The worst, life sentence without parole. He had nothing to lose. He had tried to escape in Hidalgo in the county jail. He has a bad record. So they take someone out of administrative segregation, which is about the size of a walk-in closet, because he's a danger to other inmates or correction officers, and then they put him on a bus with 16 other inmates.
Now, does every inmate that needs to see a doctor today, do they all go to Galveston to UTMB?
That is the prison hospital.
Right.
Another broken system that I've discussed in the past. UT has a very lucrative contract that they protect to provide health care, the hospitalization. So if you're in Amarillo, where do you think you go? You go to Galveston, and they shuttle you down. If you're in Amarillo, the first day you go to Waco, then you go to Huntsville, then you go down there. That makes you wonder, who's got the contract for transportation?
Right.
Lubbock Teaching Hospital, medical school, was doing West Texas, but they had a nurse that was raped a few years ago. They shut out the prison system. That was a failure of security. We need to have Lubbock treating inmates again with proper security. So, you know, I can't fix things that I don't know about.
Right.
I chair criminal justice. I hear about things, I address them, and it will be corrected. But unfortunately, we're in a situation with the Collins family losing an unimaginable family members. And it's really hard for me to discuss business while they're planning their services. But I believe everyone understands the urgency of this matter. We've got to get the most violent offenders off Texas highways.
Yes.
I spoke with the family.
And thanks for referring sources to me, Andy.
I spoke with that family Friday before we had the press conference, and that was probably one of the most difficult conversations that I've had with over 30 years of doing this. I mean, they were basically, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It was a mass murder. It was a massacre. And so there are going to be a lot of questions down the road. So it's my understanding that the offender, Lopez, he had an eye appointment.
Retina detachment of some
So
sort.
why would, I'm going, okay, why does that necessitate you?
It could have been a setup. Could have been a setup.
There's no way that this guy randomly is on the bus and decides to do what he does.
Right.
It was planned.
Yeah,
It
don't you
hasn't
think?
been orchestrated.
In the correction officer failures or several, the pat down was a failure.
They should have caught
They
that.
haven't retrieved the key. They think another inmate may have acquired the key during the scuffle, or they just haven't found it. But, you know, the prisons are dangerous places. Correction officers have a dangerous job, low compensation, poor benefits, morale's terrible. So we need to try to increase staffing, better benefits, raise the qualifications,
Right.
and just do our due diligence and let everyone recognize in the public, in the stakeholders here in the county, these are violent, dangerous people.
Right.
They will cut your throat.
Yeah.
And he was a cartel member, a known cartel
Yes.
member, who, like you said, capital murder and also attempted capital murder.
Should have
of a
never
police
been on the road.
officer, and had previously done 8 years in prison before he was convicted of this for another violent offense.
Here's one recommendation. If you're going to put them on the road at all, you need 3 correction officers, but they need to be in a van, a very tightly controlled setting. So, you know.
Because you were talking about what, 2 guards with 16, 17 inmates?
And I'm told by inmates that normally there has been 3 historically. They got horrible staffing problems. And I told the director this morning, when we have a hearing, which we will have for recommendations and to reconstruct what happened at the proper time, Brian, you have to tell us the truth about your staffing problems. We can't fix things. We can't get the legislature to allocate. We're going to have money next session because of the oil prices.
You and Brian Collier, you have a good working
Brian
relationship
Collier,
with
I
him.
have
He's been around for a long time
I
too.
have confidence in Brian Collier. He wants to do the right thing. It's a culture. You have 98 prisons today, normally out of sight, out of mind, where they're located. And every warden historically operated kind of like the mayor.
Yeah.
So you have different standards. You have contraband in some prisons more than
I
others.
remember when a guy called you on a cell phone.
From
I remember
death
that
row,
from
from
death
death
row.
row. We think Lopez had a cell phone.
Yeah.
He certainly had one of the family victims' cell phone. So, you know, he not only had cartel connections, he was a member of the Mexican mafia, which they claimed over the weekend they kicked him out, but you know, you wouldn't believe anything they said.
Right.
The bottom line is his track record on its own. He should have never been in a bus with 16 people going down Texas highways.
And when you think about it, I mean, it's a wonder. As many inmates are being traveled, driven around, it's a wonder other terrible things haven't happened.
I agree. We need to examine what they do when they have an escapee. Have they notified the neighborhood adequate? Did they maintain the roadblocks that were sufficient? Obviously, in this, there was a failure there.
I mean,
They shouldn't have allowed the Collins family perhaps to go to their
Correct.
cabin.
Yeah,
Or what they had done is they had a sticker on the door, it's been inspected, no one's been here. We don't need one inspection, we need routine 2-hour visits. And we probably, I would even say you may put a live person there to protect. I don't know the large number of cabins.
right.
Probably should have had a staff member maintaining protection of that cabin to protect the public.
That's another shocking thing that, I mean, it looks like he was there the entire time, that he never really left that area.
They wanted to capture him as bad as anybody. They had heat-seeking helicopters.
Yeah,
And even satellites they couldn't find. They tell me the underbrush in some of East Texas where it was located, it won't be penetrated by heat.
well, I read somewhere where like a decade or so ago, he escaped and he was like in a woods or something for 8 or 9 days. I mean, he was the type of person that can survive in the wilderness.
There are a lot of dangerous people in prison, but there are some that stand out as more dangerous.
Right.
Capital murders.
Yes.
There's about 200 on death row. Well, he's committed the same offenses. He just had a jury that gave him life
Life
without
instead.
parole.
That's right.
So we have to classify and profile the most dangerous, and if they go anywhere, it's under very
You had
strict.
somebody that basically had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And he knew, okay, I'm not going to be able to break out of the actual prison unit itself.
Yeah.
The only way I'm going to escape is if I'm outside the prison unit somewhere else. So that thought process
I
had to.
suppose, and it's all speculation, but just looking for answers, he saw them drive up he needed a vehicle
Yeah.
to get out. He had already changed into civilian clothes. He'd obviously been eating and resting in the cabins, but he needed a vehicle. So they drove up on Thursday for the weekend. He committed mass murder.
And didn't he open fire on the officers that right before that, but they shot
Shot
him.
him in South Texas.
Yeah, but he got out with a gun. Like
Yeah,
you said, he had nothing to lose. He would have
wasn't
shot
going back to
50
prison.
people if it would have stopped him. I mean,
And if the family, let's think about it, if the Collins family hadn't have asked for a welfare check, which actually spurred on the fact of what happened
right.
to them, there's a good possibility he might have actually made it out of the country
Yeah.
if they hadn't saying, hey,
Right.
what can you check on our family?
Because all of that happened pretty quickly.
Correct.
Correct,
And
yeah.
that probably surprised them how quick it was.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine. I mean, we've all personalized this. I have 6 and 8-year-old grandsons, and I just think about driving up to a farmhouse on top of the world, looking forward to
Yeah, a good time. You're going to go fishing.
The whole
And,
family's wiped out,
yeah.
and it was human error that allowed it to ever take place. Going back to the pat down and he had the key on him when he got on the bus.
But it doesn't and I know it's still under investigation, but right now it doesn't appear like either of the guards were.
I understand
In on
that.
it,
I was
right?
told this morning it's changing daily, but there's no criminal investigation of the correction officers at this time. There are probably going to be charges filed on other
Inmates
inmates
that knew,
that participated.
aiding and abetting.
Yeah, they were raising Cain while he was doing his thing of getting out of the cage.
Yeah, so any help that he got came from the other inmates, it appears.
Yeah, but the failure in the system was, and I've had parolees actually contact me, said there ought to be due diligence in the pat downs and whatnot, and then a lieutenant or the officer in charge should have to sign a statement, all protocols have been followed and all that. So the buck stops with somebody.
Well, and you got to wonder too, what is the threshold? I'm an inmate, and I mean, when does it get to the point where obviously they've got doctors and stuff that go into prison, right, and check people out? I mean, when is it okay? Randy Wallace needs to go to the hospital. I mean, you know what I mean? And then especially with a situation like this, he had an eye situation. He's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. I mean,
we're required by the feds to give them proper health care.
Sure.
And that's a very relative term. But we have nurse practitioners at the units because they're in such remote locations, you can't hire a professional, and it's also cheaper to have a nurse practitioner.
Right.
But the bottom line is, you isolate someone like him. If he's a capital murderer coming off of isolation,
Right.
you don't put him in contact
With a bunch of other
with
inmates.
anybody.
Do you know
Yeah.
how the
Even
time
if
period?
his eye is hurting.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know the time period when he was taken out of ADSEG to the time he boarded the bus?
I really don't. They
That would be,
just
yeah.
from
Right.
experience, they'll put him on a bus around 3 a.m, whatnot. But
I wonder how. I mean, was he taken right from ADSEG and put on a bus, or was he back in
at
general
the
population?
no, he went.
Yeah.
See, there's my point. He went
Right.
from the most
Right, restricted.
kept restricted because he's a danger to other inmates and correction officers. So he stays confined 24/7, an hour of recreation once a week, and goes straight from there into a bus with all of his connections. And don't underestimate the environment of the prison for making deals.
Oh, yeah.
Contraband.
Right.
Contraband is still a huge problem.
Right.
We don't compensate correction officers
I know.
at the level. And there are a lot of honest, hardworking correction officers. But I've had a warden tell me once that his correction officers can make more money.
Bringing in cell phones and
selling
cigarettes. Yeah.
$5 a cigarette
Right.
can get more money than the $2,000 he takes home a month from the state.
Yeah.
So we've got to raise qualifications, adequate benefits, compensation, salary, and better training.
And it sounds like from what you said before, the money's there. The state can do that. The
This
state
year
has the
we
money.
can, we sure.
I told the family when I spoke with them Friday, I said, we're not going to get into, things that are going on right now as far as what happened. But I said, trust me, down the road, your Collins family is going to be a catalyst for change.
There's no doubt about it, and I would point out from observing them from distance that their faith is the only thing that's getting them through it right
Correct. No, that's actually, yes.
So they're a strong family, believers in their faith, and so that's their security. But it's just they'll never have a happy day the rest of their life.
Right.
And so much of it should have been avoided.
But just
we will hear from them. The lieutenant governor is going to have a hearing at the proper time to reconstruct for the other members and the public what came down. Certainly we will invite the Collins family. I would think it's part of it's been my experience in the committee. You've worked with me for years. Part of the closure, part of the care is for crime victims' families to come and tell us their story.
And I know
I give them unlimited time.
And I know based on your track record, you're going to make sure that changes are made, and this is going to
work on it immediately, and there will be follow-up, there will be accountabilities, and I will not play games or partisanship. It's not a partisan issue. We want it fixed, and we want it fixed now, like I instructed yesterday. And today, they're not on the road. You had the one guy. Let me tell you another screw-up that you can run across when you're in my business. I asked them, why do you have somebody on the road at 2 o'clock this morning coming from Galveston when they had to wreck in 45? Well, Texas, UT Health in Galveston released the inmate at 5, but they wouldn't let him leave because of paperwork until around midnight. So we had a chance to have an inmate back in his prison before dark, but because of paperwork and the bureaucracy at the hospital, he didn't get on the road till the middle of the night. So, it's frustrating.
Yeah, right.
It's common sense. It's don't be complacent. Don't do business the way you've always done it. So, it takes a tragedy. The Uvalde situation is another glaring example of breakdown upon breakdown of how things could have been better. And that was avoidable if we'd have paid attention to the young person, the killer's statements on social media.
right.
We need a mental health system that's on call. So the problem is, and I've been in the legislature longer than anybody, we're a reactive body.
That's true.
And it's very frustrating that we're not proactive, whether it's on school safety
Right.
or prison operations or hurricane preparations. We've got to do a better job in the state of Texas of forecasting and dealing proactively with law and order, public school safety, city operations, courthouse operations, and don't react to the tragedies.
That's an excellent
Then
point.
it's too late.
Thank you all
So
so.
we got something tonight.
Oh, yeah, thank
We
you.
do.
You remember to
That's why
promote Breaking
I
Bond
am-
more than I do.
Why I keep making big bucks.
That's right. The big zero. He gets paid zero.
Make note of that, you know.
But we're gonna buy you a pie or something, I promise. No, seriously, be sure to tune in tonight at Fox News at 9 for an episode of Breaking Bond. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it because we've been doing this for a couple of weeks now, and it's on the surface, it's kind of crazy. We hear so much about gun control. That's a huge concern now, and rightfully so. But we keep seeing judges treating the crime of felon in possession like a weapon, like it's nothing, right? It's like, oh, it's just felon in possession of a weapon. You can get out now. Now, you would think, as a society, the person that we do not want to have a gun is a convicted felon. And some of the district court judges, criminal district court judges, need to start taking it more seriously.
No, and at Crime Stoppers, we're actually going to be delving into that issue of how many defendants charged with felon in possession of a firearm are actually back out on the street. And again, how many of them who have been charged with felon in possession of a firearm have gone on to further commit additional crimes.
Including murder.
Yes.
It's very disturbing.
Good
Hey,
night.
see you tonight at 9. Thank you so much for joining us for the live stream.
Well, just one
Raymond?
before we go.
Yes.
One of our Facebook viewers says the gun dealer should have called the police. Why sell 2 AR-15s to a local-looking kid? Damn, the kid didn't look stable. I mean,
But-
is there anything that could have?
Yeah, but you know, that's kind of hard, right? Because you can't, it's hard to really look at someone and say, well, you don't look real stable.
He was following the law.
That's right.
And I'm not saying, I mean, I would change that law. In
Right.
fact, I'm appealing to my Republican and Democratic colleagues. Surely we can agree to raise the age
To 21.
But the salesperson would have to use his own judgment. He works for someone else that's in the business to make a profit. So
And anybody can make the argument. I mean, I look crazy, but that's I mean,
yeah,
I am.
but I think the caller has a legitimate question. 18-year-old, 2 assault rifles right after his birth. Now, he
But
could
it's the law.
have said it's his birthday presents for my father, whatnot. We just don't know. He was following the law, and I would argue that that's the law that needs to be changed.
And I believe there was, I heard some story where I think he worked at Wendy's for,
Part-time.
yeah, just to be
When
able
he
to
come up
have.
with that amount of money is a big question.
Right. I mean, he worked a lot of
About
hours.
$3,000.
A lot of questions on both cases involving mass murders and young people.
Yeah, yes. Okay, State Senator John Whitmire, thank you so much. It's an honor to have you. And you all be sure to tune in at Fox 26 News at 9 tonight for Breaking Bond. Thank you.
On these guns, but
This is the line.
they ought to